If I told you the best Korean pros are playing Roadhog, would you believe me?
I ain't got no $1 million deals, I still make hits. These niggas got $1 million deals and just take shit. I'm not with it. Scope out, I got good vision.
Roadhog is one of the worst tanks in the game with a 40% win rate in Asia. Yet somehow, the Koreans are pulling him out alongside Sombra Tracer.
This is garbage.
It's beautiful.
It's been half a decade since Roadhog's actually been played. Yet now we're actually seeing some play of him before GTA 6. So get ready for some fat whole hogs, a quick visit to meet Hog's biggest enemy, and of course some insane hooks.
No one cared who I was till I put on the mask.
The first game we'll be looking at will be between top Korean teams, Falcons and Zeta, with someone pulling out the Hog on the last round of Samoa. Now, I'm gonna break down Hog's job into 3 components, increasing in how flashy or show-offy each part is. Being a walking threat is the first part. Basically, considering the Genji Tracer meta we're in right now, Hog can walk wherever he wants to. Because Genji Tracer haven't got the damage to force up my 500 kilo king, Roadhog. And while you might say to just go Reaper, which is what Pelican does, that's where the second part comes in, your threats. And I think it's better to show this than tell it. In this first fight, someone walks up to the point and threatens Pelican with the hook. While he misses, he forces Pelican to Wraith, which might not look like much initially, but because the Kiri Sombra have got a pincer straight onto Pelican, that hook kinda led to a dominoes effect of getting the kill. Speaking of your Sombra Kiri, you can kinda think of this weird Frankenstein dive comp in 2 pieces. Your mobile characters, so your Sombra, Tracer and Kiri, take angles around the main fight, while your Hog is a walking threat down main. Literally like that opening Bane scene where soldiers flank around the plane while Bane is fucking shit up inside. And of course, Roadhog is Bane in this analogy. And don't worry, this is one of many Bane analogies coming later. Now, you might be wondering why being a walking threat even matters to begin with. But first, I have to talk about your hook. Now, for those who don't know, Hog got his kit reverted back to what it was at the start of Overwatch 2, meaning no pigpen and your secondary fire made a return. However, the devs realized that Hog was more ass than that new Drake song, so they buffed him a few days later. As a result, someone in the very next fight is able to hit and land the hook kill onto Finn. Don't ask how many times Finn died this round. Okay, yeah, it was a few. Now, you can kind of think of Hog as having a 20-meter radius around him when he's got that hook online. And if you step within that space, you're at risk of getting hooked. But why does this matter right now? Well, it's because nobody can threaten you outside of those 20 meters. Literally look how fast someone pushes up to the enemy spawn without any fear. The Ball Tracer simply don't have enough damage to threaten Hog at all. And think about it. Characters that can damage Hog outside of those 20 meters, like Sojourn or Cassidy, aren't popular right now, probably because they just got big HP nerfs. But both of those characters are great at farming Hog. Sojourn can easily farm rail off your big hitbox, and Cass can fan the hammer up close or just farm you from distance. But with those heroes out the lobby, you can see how free someone is to walk on a flank and directly threaten the Tracer. Which nicely leads me onto the second layer, stuffing, absorbing and punishing. Stuffing is exactly what it sounds like. Controlling or stuffing an area to prevent people from passing through. It's very similar to the disruption concept in my anti-dive video, and it kinda gives you shall not pass vibes. In this instance, someone is stuffing the Tracer angle. This stops Alpha from flanking around, which is vital because you don't want the enemy team to outmaneuver you as Roadhog. To hammer this point home, you can see a very similar example when Farmer tries to hook Viper. It stuffs him back towards the coast, away from Farmer's backline. But there's a catch, which is that you kinda need to hit the hook for stuffing to work. You can see that because the Tracer dodges the hook, she's able to flank all the way around and outmaneuver the Hog. And back to Falcons, because someone misses that hook, Alpha eventually outmaneuvers the Hog by flanking to the right side, catching the Wu Yang. This is one of Hog's biggest weaknesses, that without hook, he's not a walking threat, just a sack of meat. And yes, we'll get into more worrying issues later. However, we haven't mentioned Hog's second ability, his budget transcendence. Back to where the stuffing fails and Chio dies first, Zeta try their best afterwards to mow down the Hog, but because of Hog's breather, someone just tanks the damage and leaves. Soon after, Fielder farms up the Kitsune, dropping it down to keep the Hog alive. Even better, someone hits an insane hook that I'm gonna save for later. But the point is that in these fairly low damage comps, it's not as simple as just W keying onto the Hog and running him over. Though, with that being said, what if you could? I'm sure many of you have been waiting for the dreaded Orisa Counter, which we saw when T1 played up against Cheeseburger. Yes, there is a Korean team called Cheeseburger.
Press Cheeseburger.
After T1 lost the first round to Roadhog, Donghak decides to go Orisa. The reason why Orisa is so good is actually because she can stuff the Hog pretty well, and that's exactly what Donghak does. Farmer just can't walk on any angle because Orisa is going to disrupt it with Javelin. But there is counterplay, and we can get some insight from professional coach Cuffy, who coached a Hog one-trick team. In short, you need to play your Hog on wider angles with better LOS. But that is hard to do on this map. It's just too narrow and Hog can't just walk around and avoid the Orisa. With that being said, because the first fight becomes so messy, Donghak is forced to give up space, which allows the Hog to play wide and become that walking threat. Sadly, his Genji dies beforehand. And unlike that previous map, where someone could just walk out scot-free, that becomes much harder to do, precisely because of the Orisa. In fairness, the supports are giving as much healing as possible, but it's still just not enough. Despite that, there's more to the story here. Again, a seemingly random Korean underdog taking a round of a top 4 Korean team is unheard of, and that comes down to punishing after absorbing. You see, pressing your breather while you absorb a dive isn't hard to do. The hard part is punishing the divers afterwards. And there's no better example than the very first fight from Cheeseburger. Things don't actually start that well, as Skewed hits a fat water balloon straight onto the Tracer, followed up by a boop from Donghak to confirm the kill. However, Farmer's able to live, meaning not only does he push forward to catch the Torb, but he also catches the Kiriko, who's trying to be sneaky behind. Soon after, Cheeseburger go back to stuffing, as I mentioned earlier. It's not just the Tracer though, as he threatens the Sim while he walks back to points. Even better, Farmer flanks through the left, catching Skewed, who's low-key just out of position. And for the cherry on top, Farmer stuffs the Sim TP, catching the Ana kill too. Back to that Bane analogy, every hook landed is kinda like when Bane breaks Batman's back. You need to dodge Bane, or dodge Hog in this case, something we'll see later. Those last 3 kills all kinda lead me onto the last, most flashy aspect of Hog, in that he's kind of a one-man army. Not only do Tracers have to blink away the millisecond you walk close to them, but the next few fights show how much you can do solo. And yes, we'll soon get into some big environmental kills and 1v3 clutches, but first we gotta go through Cheeseburger's retake. Once again, things don't start well, with both supports dying early. Argon and Dodo thankfully trade up the kills, and Farmer is able to heal away and support himself without the need of his backline. In fact, it takes a dodgy Wuyang ult by Skewed, who, according to Coach Capitology, throws this map, that eventually ends up taking down Farmer. This means, for next fight, Cheeseburger can engage with their Wuyang ult. And while it's accidentally placed on Hog, it still stuns the ball and forces out Nano Boost. From there, he catches and kills Skewed, who is not beating the throwing allegations. Straight after, Farmer pops his ultimate, the Eddington machine gun, firing just a few shots that are enough to boop off Zest. But we're not done there, as Farmer hits the predict hook onto the Tracer. Speaking of predict hooks, remember that Falcons game? Well, when someone is busy getting pounded by Alpha Yi, he low-key just forces his recall by the threat of hook, landing the prediction straight onto him, confirming the kill. Now, if you're sharp-eyed, you would have spotted that someone has no ammo left, and only when he hooks the Tracer, he gets 2 shots back.
You know what? Here go 2 more for y'all.
That's thanks to the Scrap Hook minor perk, simply giving Hog 2 ammo back on every hook hit. The other minor perk that's new this season drastically buffs the range of your secondary fire, which was taken by Farmer in that Cheeseburger T1 game, but that's the only time the perk was taken. May Gaming also pulled out the Hog twice, once on Atlas and the other on Lijiang, both times picking that Scrap Hook perk. But why? Well, I think it's a matter of make or break. Having to reload after hooking a target means you flat out miss the kill. You can't even say to reload before hooking because sometimes there just isn't the time for that. The extra range on your shotgun is nice, but it's not make or break, and frankly, most Hogs aren't hitting that perfect shot range anyways. Top level Hog players like Six use the hook perk too, alongside Dirt as well, but it's not like the gun perk is bad either. As for your major perk, all the Korean Hogs unanimously pick Invigorate over Pulled Pork. The reason isn't complicated, it's consistently good at enabling you to be more of a walking threat, and Pulled Pork is reliant on how good you are at hitting your hooks. Considering how mobile most of these comps are, you can imagine how hard that can be. Now, there's a big elephant in the room here. Why are most teams playing Hog still losing? I'll get onto that soon, but first, we gotta see this unbelievable clutch by Ruler on Atlas. In fact, I'm gonna have a Ruler kill counter in the bottom right for this fight. Unsurprisingly, Mir Gaming are the underdogs here playing up against Onside Gaming, and immediately you can see the struggle from the Hog team, as even though Ruler gets his first catch onto opener, 3 people are already dead on Mir Gaming. But Ruler's okay. Because he's basically a one-man army, he just pops the self-heal and leaves. Now we're in a 1v3, but irony is low. It's a clutch hook by Ruler that may have been accidental, which allows him to catch the Genji kill. A sneeze onto the Kiri finishes that 3rd kill too, which just buys enough time for the rest of Hog's team to come back. A nice 3-kill clutch for Ruler. Now there's 3 important bits of micro if you want to pull this off yourself. Crosshair placements, waiting, and target priority. Looking back at that Genji hook, while it's lucky, the crosshair placement certainly isn't. Because Genji is so close, placing the crosshair on his head is completely reasonable, so you maximize the crit damage without missing many pellets. As for waiting, all that means is that you don't pull the trigger immediately after the hook. You can see here, I hold M1 while I'm hooking and barely do any damage. Conversely, if I wait a tiny bit, I can walk forwards, land more pellets, and get the kill. And lastly, target priority in this context just means to not hook ball. The reason is that you could be hooking a Genji or a Tracer instead, which can obviously lead to a one-shot. In fairness, Ruler hooked ball a lot at the beginning, which is fine if you're able to get him low. But most of the Hogs I saw just didn't do this. They either saved the hook to stuff squishies early on, like you can see Farmer doing here, or to punish squishies later on, which once again, thank you skewed. But of course, if Hog was so good, he'd be winning everywhere. But he isn't, so what's going on? I'll get onto his biggest issue soon, but first I gotta plug my Sparlow approved coaching. Click below if you want to improve at the game. Now, one of the key problems with Hog is that it's super easy to outmaneuver him. We saw this a little bit earlier, where the Tracer just went around the Hog to reach backline. If the Hog was a diva, she could stuff the Tracer before she reaches backline. Even though the Hog team win the first points, they lose the next 3 back-to-back for this very reason. Every single person is easily able to path and maneuver around the Hog early on because he's got no mobility. Back to the Bane example, it's like dodging his punches at the right time. Every missed punch is a missed hook, and only later can you kick Bane's shit in, which is low-key what happened here on Atlas. Now this doesn't mean that during dives, Hog can't get his 1, as you can see with the Genji, but the damage has already been done as his backline dies. In fairness, Ruler clutches out once more, hooking and killing the Tracer and finishing off Irony. But the reality is that cases like these are often the exception, not the rule. In fact, on the same points, you can see here how the enemy Tracer and Wu Yang outmaneuver the Hog and 2v1 the Genji. Meanwhile, Ado and Irony are also playing out of Hog's range, so the only target to hook is ball, which isn't ideal. In short, good pathing will almost always beat the Roadhog. But still, and I can't believe I'm saying this, Hog is actually in his best state in Overwatch right now. Partially because hit scans are in their worst state ever, so you can basically walk wherever you want to. You're also more likely to be a one-man army against squishy, low-damage dive heroes. Most of the teams playing Hog are basically underdogs, so they're more likely to lose regardless if they play Hog or not. But as long as you've got hands to hit most of your hooks, you can stuff, absorb, and punish dive heroes like nobody else. As always, if you enjoyed, be sure to subscribe since I'm trying to hit 50k by the end of the year. Click the video on screen too. Until next time.